My whole life exploded. My whole life turned upside down and I was homeless. All those questions that rattle through your head, you're like, how did I end up here? And I just picked up a notebook and I started writing. I was looking for patterns, anything that I can find that can help me figure out this puzzle and where things got derailed and went wrong.
This is Eagle Freedom Presents.
15 years ago, a Hollywood stuntman sat in a freezing truck scribbling a letter to the sons he hadn't yet even met. He had spent his life surviving war zones and literal explosions, but in that moment, he wasn't sure he'd be around to give them the map that they'd need to survive the world. Today, that stuntman, Aaron Crippen, has turned those scribbles into a powerful legacy called Love at First Fall. He's here to show us that in life, falling isn't failure, it's actually a direction. Aaron, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. It's good to be here.
Let's just really jump into this. You've made a career out of being physically unbreakable, whether that was in the military or on a movie set. But you said that writing the messy parts of your life for your boys was the scariest thing you've ever done. So, why was it harder to take off that whole emotional armor than it was to jump off of a building?
That's a great question. Well, I mean, everybody falls. We all have falls in life. We fall from grace. I mean, there's so many falls in life, but and honestly, the hardest falls in my life never happened on a movie set. All those hard falls were always the ones you didn't see coming, and those hits are always the hardest. Like uh, in stunts, and I mean, and for that matter, the military, all that, most of that is like planned chaos. You have a team behind you, you have all this help with, falling and getting up and to keep going. You have a team to rely on. And but in life, you don't always have that luxury. Sometimes you take those hits and you're just down for the count, trying to figure out how to get back up. So I think those messy parts of my life, learning to be vulnerable and share those moments, the moments that I wanted to forget so bad, that was a pretty tough thing to endure.
Being a stuntman, was this something that came later in life that you got into, or was this something that was, crafted in the early days of your life, in the childhood?
Being a stuntman, that was a childhood dream that just never went away. I think so from the beginning, just watching Evil Knievel and, I don't know, you remember the TV show The Fall Guy with Lee
Oh, yeah.
Major? Yeah, I remember being a kid and watching that, and I was just like, "What?" I'm like, "Somebody will pay you to do that?" So that's where I fell in love with it. I didn't know how to do it. It was a really long journey to figure out how to keep chasing that dream, but eventually it finally worked out.
What was one memory that you recall right now that said, "Oh, yeah, I've done this. I'm hooked now."
I can remember that moment like it was yesterday because uh my cousins and we got a hold of like a little video camera. So every family event was always based around a meal. And so as soon as we would eat really quick, just hurry up and eat. And then we were out the door with the camera and just trying to figure out how to make something happen. And then my I had two cousins that were the same age as me, and then we had a couple other cousins that were a little bit younger, and we would just run around. And I was always the one to try to figure out something to smash into or jump off of, and my other cousin was the one who would come up with some kind of crazy plan, and then my other cousin was always the one that would fix everything that we broke, and that's how we went along growing up.
So did you ever have, one of those accidents where you get up, you're bleeding, you're all beat up and you run into the house and mom and dad are there? Do you recall a time when you would run to the house and what would their reaction be?
Yeah, we've had quite a few of those moments. I remember we were trying to do this fight scene in the garage on a family event, and somehow I backed up and my foot went through an old fish tank that was in the corner, and glass was broken, and my foot's bleeding everywhere. And yes, the reaction was usually pretty similar. It was, what did you do now?" How much is this gonna cost me?
Was there ever a time when your parents said, "Okay, this is a nice little childhood dream of yours, but, Aaron, time to grow up. Let's do so you gotta do something different." Did that ever happen?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think no one really understood what that entailed, including myself, in all honesty. It's like that path to get from where I was to where I wanted to go was pretty hard to navigate. So, like most parents, they kind of they see you excited about something, they want to try to support you, but they have no idea how. And I think throughout the years of trying things that didn't work and all those moments of failure, and all of a sudden you get a break and then nothing happens. Even my friends also, it was a lot of people were like, "Hey, what are you doing, man? Why are you still chasing this thing down?" And I guess it just was one of those childhood dreams that just never went away. Something would always spark it back up again, and just kept going for it.
You didn't just go straight into Hollywood or doing all this stuff. Life happened in between. So you actually got into the military. What was it that drew you to being a part of the military?
I think it was a number of things. Most of my family was always in the service. My dads, my uncles were Vietnam vets, and my grandfather was Air Force. He was a pilot in World War II, and then my brother was he signed up also. So for me, when I was still chasing that childhood dream, and things weren't working out, and you're young. Nobody wants to hire a 18-year-old kid who thinks he's got life figured out. Everyone's like, "Get out of here, kid." But I mean, it was just a lot of growing up to do. I mean, and I felt like a failure. I didn't make my dream happen. I wasn't sure where to go. Things weren't working out. I was getting in a bit of trouble, and then that option kind of was there of go do something real and go be challenged and go follow some family footsteps. Did I do them for all those reasons or all the right reasons? Probably not, but that's kind of I knew about that door from family.
Did your time in the military, because you did a lot in the military, you were heavily involved, did a lot of stuff in jungles and all of this. Did any of that continue to prepare you for your stunt career? Did you take some of that with you? And if you did, what did that time in the military instill in you into following your dream of being a stuntman?
There's so many things that I mean, I think in all honesty, I think that was a big part of why I became, successful when I got back into stunts. So I was into stunts before I went into the military. I ended up doing 9 years in the military, and then I came out, and, that bug was just still there, and some of my friends were in the film business working different jobs, and that's how I got back into it. The biggest takeaways from the military, I mean, there's so many life lessons, just the values that get instilled in you stick with you, having that I think anyone who travels the world and gets to see a lot of different things, it really opens your mind up to, how people are. And especially in the military, it's like I was a small town kid who grew up in a little tiny town of 1,500 people. And then you get dropped into this huge amount of people from all over the world, and they're all just crammed into one space, basic training, different schools, your unit, all that stuff. And you guys are supposed to operate as a unified team. Well, of course that doesn't happen. Everybody's got, especially in the beginning and basic and that kind of thing. So I think you learn a lot about people, and no matter where people are from, what color they are, how they grew up, what they've been through, people are pretty similar and they have a lot more in common than most people think. And I think especially when you get put through intense situations, whether it's deployments or combat or whatever that is, in the end, those doesn't matter where someone's from, you know, different events, they're your brothers and you're out there to protect them and you trust them to protect you. And that's the way it works.
You spent 9 years in the military. So once you got out, did it leave you wondering for a while where you were headed next? Even though you still had the dream of being a stuntman, did you still question what you were gonna do next?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a big transition going from, 9 years of this then to now you're suddenly out. You don't have a chain of command anymore. You don't have a squad leader, platoon leader, lieutenant. You don't have any you lost all your structure. You lost your, the backbone of everything that you had is now gone. And on top of that, you have this unique skill set that doesn't help you in any job. I can't think of many jobs where, like, all right, can you shoot a weapon? Can you operate this weapon system? Yeah, nobody needs an assault done. So, I mean, how do you, where do you go from there? It's a big adjustment. And that was, on top of, some of the things that you see and end up doing, like, they're not things that you necessarily always want to remember or think about. And so you add all that in with this transition of going from military to civilian, it's a huge adjustment and a hard one at that.
So, at what point did you really start to pursue being a stunt man in Hollywood? Because I think, a lot of people have this image of Hollywood stunt man, everything's just great, everything's fantastic. But the reality of it is it's completely just the opposite.
The military was probably the one thing that helped me the most in this crazy, I mentioned you have this unique skill set that doesn't help you with any job except for maybe stunts because all of a sudden, you know, they need people to play soldiers and just, it's a lot easier to run through a fake explosion than a real one. So I was like, yeah, sign me up for that. But it was like all of a sudden I was doing my job, but in make believe and pretend. I could operate some of these weapon systems that most people weren't familiar with. I could play a police officer because I was good with firearms when a lot of people weren't familiar with, shooting pistols or weapons or anything like that. So that was my military experience actually helped me to kind of get into some of these places, and then things started clicking a little bit more.
Do you recall the first gig that you got? The first thing that said, "Okay, you're finally getting called up to do something." Can you walk us through the very first one?
The first biggest one for sure, that was, and it was just like a friend of a friend type of thing. They were looking for some more drivers to help out on a film. They don't tell you a lot, and I said yes without knowing much. And then like you show up to work and then you just heaps of paperwork, signing these non-disclosure agreements, and you can't share pictures or anything like that. And we're signing all this stuff, and then we show up to work, and like they give us like this fake movie title thing, and then you're like, okay, this is what we're supposed to tell people the name of the movie is that we're working on, and you're looking at this paperwork, and then you look at this building next to you, and it says Gotham City Bank, and you're like, I don't think people are going to believe this paperwork here. So yeah, that we worked on the Dark Knight, in Chicago, doing different driving stuff, wherever they could put us in different aspects of things, and I think I drove some police cars and taxi cabs, and that was just an amazing experience to all of a sudden be on a huge set like that. It was incredible, and then just hooked for life.
Yeah, so that must have been the moment when you did the stunts for Batman. Was that the moment that you said, "Yep, yep, here we are. This is it."
Yeah, yeah, you feel like you made it, and for so many reasons because my cousin was Christian Bale's stand-in also. So here I am, you know, growing up with my cousins filming backyard movies, like, pretending like, we were making blockbusters in our minds, even though we were just running around with camcorders as kids and just loving it. It was the greatest thing ever. And we did that. We spent so much time doing that. And then all of a sudden, I'm actually on Batman movie, and I'm looking at my cousin who's he is Batman. He's dressed up as Batman and just I don't know, somebody's got to pinch me. He said, "Doesn't feel real." It was a great moment. It was amazing.
must have been quite a feeling, though, at that moment to realize, because not everybody gets to realize their childhood dream, what they want to do. And here you are, both of you, here you are years later, from playing in the backwoods and bikes and all this stuff, and now you're actually here. So that had to been the moment for both of you to just go, "We made it."
Yeah, I mean, it was a definitely it was a great moment, and, childhood dreams are so funny because I mean, like most kids, I had so many childhood dreams of, I wanted to be a firefighter, I wanna be a police officer, you have all these, even, I got pictures of me as a kid dressed up as a soldier, I wanted to be a soldier, that was another childhood dream, but what's interesting about the stunt business is I've really gotten to kinda check off those childhood dreams repeatedly over and over again. You get to drive a fire truck or drive a police car. I can drive a police car with the lights on, speed down the road, but I don't have to write any tickets or do any paperwork. I can just, all right, that was great. That was fun. It's the best.
I wanna dig deeper into the heart of the book, but before we get that, uh, I want you to think out of all of the crashes, combat, what was maybe the one moment where you truly thought, "Okay, this one is one I might not walk away from." Is there one that stands out in your mind?
There's a lot of those moments. I've had them in recreation. I've had them in the military. I've had them in stunts for sure. But I think if we're going to keep it with stunts, I think the difference is the team behind you. I mean, there was moments where I was playing a part and we were in an underwater set and so you're in the water and the scene is I'm in a boat and it's capsized and they're trying to get me out. Some rescue divers are trying to get me out, but I don't have any dive equipment on. I'm the only one in there with no dive equipment. And so they're trying to get me out. So we have all these shots of we're underwater, we're trying to fight. There's like a little air gap in the boat that's maybe this big. They hit a button on the set and the set comes down, hits your head and just pushes you underwater, that type of stuff. And it is really exhausting, but there's a few moments in there where I had to kind of recollect myself because, you know, uh you can't see very well. They murky up the water and you're swimming, you go the wrong way and you hit something and just hey, I think I'm gonna drown right here. But there was a moment and a realization of, hey, you know what? I start sucking in water, I'm gonna probably pass out. And my team is on the outside of this watching, somebody's gonna grab me. So if I pass out, then I pass out, whatever. It was that realization. But those it doesn't help the mind with the fear, like, yeah, I'm gonna drown right today. This is gonna happen, which, almost did a few times. But the realization that that's the difference with stunts to real life is with stunts, I got a team of people watching out for me, people that I know, people that I trust. And I think when you have that, your mind is you're at ease a lot more.
There's that aspect of, doing the stunts and thinking, "Okay, this might not no, I might not come away from it this one." But there's also the real life aspect of it. And and I know you went through a lot of struggles sleeping in your trucks and all that, just day to day trying to survive. Were there moments in those times where you doubted what you were doing?
100%. And a lot of those moments where, I've talked about this with a couple other people, and I, when I grew up, what I was taught was, hey, this is what you do is you get yourself a job, find a job with benefits, and you work that job, and then you get a retirement and you get a pension. That's what everybody was teaching me. But what I saw growing up was I saw all these people that were miserable because they were in a job they didn't like. And then once they got close to retirement, they lost their job, they lost their pension. I kept seeing that over and over again. So for me, when I was, 18, 19 years old, my biggest fear was working a job that I felt like I couldn't leave because of the benefits. Like just staying at a job that I didn't like because of benefits scared me to death because everything that I saw taught me that, hey, your benefits might not be there anymore when it comes time to get them, which I think everybody knows that's pretty much accurate right now. You look at Social Security or anything like that. So, you know, doubting it, yeah, I doubted what I was doing 1,000 times and thought it was laughable because the business is so unpredictable. You would be working on something like that Batman movie we talked about. It was such a big moment. We were on such a high. It was amazing. And it felt like that this is my big break, right? For sure. This is my big break. What happened, what happened after that movie was nothing. Nothing happened. There was the movie left town and there was no work for another 6 months. So then you're at this high, and then all of a sudden you're sending out stuff, you're trying to look at more jobs and nothing happens. So you have these huge moments and then gaps in between, and those gaps are where you really start to doubt yourself.
So it wasn't consistent job after job after job in the stunt industry. As you mentioned, it was a job here and then there's nothing
Mhm.
for who knows how long. So you have to survive. You have to figure out a way, how am I going to make it to the next phone call that's going to give me my next big break? Where in all of this journey did you decide that you want to write a book, that you want to come out with your story? What made you decide that?
So the decision it was never really meant to be a book in the beginning. In the beginning, it was my whole life exploded and my whole life turned into a country song. If my truck was an electric car, it probably would have left without me. So it just my whole life turned upside down and I was homeless. I had no place to live. I was sleeping in my truck and I just all those questions that rattle through your head, you're like, how did I end up here? And I picked up a notebook and I started writing. And all I was looking for is I don't even know what I was writing. In the beginning, I was just anything. I was looking for patterns, anything that I can find that can help me figure out this puzzle and where things got derailed and went wrong. And through that process, I just really enjoyed the process of it. And I learned a lot about myself. So it was a lot of years of writing different things and finding patterns and seeing things. Like the first thing that I noticed, I was like, wow, I had a lot of close calls in my life. And I mean, and everybody has close calls, whether it's a car accident or whatnot. But I added up mine and it was like over 70. And I was like, "That seems a little higher than most." So I was like, why is that keep happening? So I started to try to figure that out. And then I just kept seeing things and seeing things and seeing things and putting the pieces together. And I learned a lot doing that.
Was there anybody in your career, maybe not necessarily your career, but in your life that inspired you or instilled in you that you were following the right path, that this is what you should be doing, following what your dream is?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's been a lot of people for sure. Um, I think people have I think there's people in different moments of your life. I think one of the big ones for sure for me was my cousin Grant. He was the ones who we ran around the backyard with cameras and made movies, and he was Christian Bale's stand-in, and so we were the ones that kind of always were we would talk a lot on the phone and just yeah, we'll just keep going and we're what's going on, always positive even when things aren't going your way of just helping you stay on track. He was one of those for sure.
There are so many great lines in this book. So I want to kind of bring some and talk to you about some of them. One of the lines in the book is falling isn't failure, it's a direction. So can you walk us through a specific moment, either a physical crash or a personal heartbreak where hitting the ground actually showed you exactly where you needed to go next?
Yeah, I could actually tell you one that's not in the book if you want to hear that one.
Sure. Yes.
So it was this fall was a I mean, this would have been a dream job for any stunt performer out there. It had everything. It had acting and dialogue with a really amazing actor, high work, 80 feet up in the air, with a dramatic high fall as well. It had everything. And the, you know, the scene was basically it's like this construction thing on the side of a building, 80 feet in the air, where it all went wrong and it's all messed up. Guys are hanging off the side. They're all in trouble. Fire department rocks up. They're trying to rescue everybody. That's the scene. I was playing the part as the foreman, and as they come to get me, I'm like, "Save my guys first." And then, and it was met by the time they get to me, my grip slipping. There's a big dramatic slip from the air where I grab on. There's dialogue with the actor, and I'm reaching out. All this stuff is going on, and then I fall, and I do a 65-foot fall onto a half-filled airbag, and end up in the hospital. That's the scene, and it was, hundreds of people were there to see it, and it was a really popular show, and it went good, and that's what every it was one of those scenes that everybody remembers. But what I remember was 2 weeks before that, I got a phone call that my mom passed away, and so right away, like most people, you go right into how who do I need to call? How you go right into repair mode. How do I fix this? How blah blah blah. Which of course I did, and and I thought about walking away from that particular job, but I asked, I thought about it, and what would my mom tell me to do? And well, she would have been so excited because that was her favorite actor, also in the world. She would have been so excited to hear that I got that and to see it and the whole thing. She would have told me to show up, so I did. But the sneaky part of that is, when I started running dialogue with that actor, hearing his voice and the thoughts of my mom and the whole thing, I we were just in a rehearsal. It was just me, the actor, and the director, and I couldn't get through the rehearsal. I had to stop, and I asked the director. I said, "Can you give me a minute, please?" And I walked away, and I came back and I explained to him what happened. Up until that point, no one knew what was going on, and they understood that, and they worked with me, and we got through it. But to go back to the question of, by the time I did that high fall, and I was there 65 feet up, and I let go and I fell onto the airbag, that that moment I think taught me a lot, because it's not about the falls that you practice. It's about the falls you don't see coming. And it's about what that fall in particular taught me was that you can never be prepared for certain falls, no matter how much you rehearse or and just knowing that, it was just an eye-opening experience.
Yeah. The other part of this about your journey that you had to overcome was fear. I mean, whether it was the military or, doing the stunts. And there's another line in your book, and I'll read it. It says, "I let fear convince me there was something wrong with me." Now, that's a powerful line. Uh, I've never heard that kind of a phrasing before. I let fear convince me that there was something wrong with me. Tell us more about what that line means to you.
Fear and adrenaline are very similar emotions. They would almost have the same heartbeat to it. So what that really means is, when you're in true fear. Now, have you ever had that moment where something happens, and it's almost like you're turned into a superhero, where the whole world slows down, and it's
Mhm.
almost like one moment feels like it lasted hours, and you saw every tiny little frame of what exactly was happening. It's like, for some people, or I think actually for all of us, let me back up there. So sometimes I've had moments in my life where that happens, where that fear intensifies and you can see every frame of things. But I've also had moments of fear where things go so fast, you don't even know what happens. You have no idea what happened. And I've seen that with newer performers, where I was like, I saw what happened and I wanted to talk to them about it. I said, "How did it go?" And they're like, I don't know. I don't know how it went. I'm good." They have no idea. They don't remember any of it. So with fear, it, fear has a way of kind of also trying to give you an out, to give you an exit, to where if you have enough fear, your mind is gonna give you an out. You don't need to do this. This doesn't need to happen. Like, you're always gonna have those voices in your head. So for me, that's what it means. It's like almost not listening to that voice in your head.
And not letting it control the direction, right? As you mentioned, it's there to give you an out. Here's the exit sign right over here. You don't have to do this. Take this exit sign. But the problem with that is if you do that, then you never overcome that obstacle, right? You never have the opportunity again, maybe just go, wait a no, I have to do this. And I'll give you an example to what this is like. I have a granddaughter who was getting ready to do a big high ropes course. She was only 7 years old when this happened, and she got up there and she just froze. She's like, tears coming down, and she's like, "Oh, I can't do this." I said, "Okay, well, we can walk down." She's like, "No, no, 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 I have to do this."
She did that on her own?
She did it. She did it. She did it because if she didn't, she would always be fearful of that
Mhm.
obstacle in her life. So it's
Good for
exactly
her.
what you were talking about, you know.
That's
You know,
good for her to challenge herself like that. That's incredible. That's amazing.
another part of your story is you got involved in rodeo, and it's part of your book. And I want to read a part in here that you put in here about the rodeo. It says, "Rodeo didn't break me; it branded me with grit and gratitude. The stubborn truth: sometimes the ride isn't about the buckle; it's about who you become when you get back in the saddle. And I knew this much: the ride wasn't over yet." You've had a lot of obstacles in your life where the ride wasn't over yet. And this book is full of, not only is it full of all the adversity and the setbacks that you had to overcome. And there's a reason, I think, reason why it says love at first fall, because it's also got passion in it and part of your life and over finding the right person in your life. Can you talk to us a little bit more about how that came to be?
I mean, that was quite the story in itself, actually. I mean, the chances of us meeting had to be pretty slim. So again, we talked about having those gaps in between jobs and what do you do and how do you fill the time? Well, a lot of times performers would, oh, I'll do this live show or I'll do this show, but all those shows have a short lifespan. So I did a jousting show, and through that jousting show, I met a few people. And again, working with horses ever since I was a kid as well, which is how I ended up there. But then there was another show coming up that was it was started in Vegas to open in San Diego. And I ended up getting that opportunity to start on that show. And so then I packed up everything I owned, which wasn't much, and headed west. And yeah, basically, I left with the horse trailer and had everything in the back that I owned in a horse trailer, which, yeah, there's still room back there.
Reading the book is like watching a movie. It's so well written, and the way you describe everything and you break things down, and some of that you break down into scenes, and like you're actually on a movie set, and the way you describe meeting your now wife, it was truly amazing.
Yeah, I mean, and it was an amazing moment. I mean, that show was unbelievable. It was like Circus Olay on horseback meets Gladiator. I mean, it was insane. And some of the things that they were trying to do just didn't even seem possible. And so between physical things from the performers and then you add that on top of the horseback, it's like I'm going to stand on two horses and then I'm going to ride underneath some performer on a silk sack and I'm going to scoop her up and then she's going to stand on my shoulders while we ride and we're never going to stop. And it's like, yeah, okay. But they did it. It's unbelievable. Uh, but yeah, meeting her was incredible. It was one of those moments where you just kind of look back on and still makes you kind of smile. You're like, well, that was kind of such a cheesy moment. And it was one of those moments. And I remember, and I think that's part of the reason why I remember thinking in my head, I'm like, well, this girl is completely out of my league. This is ridiculous. So, but I remember as we started hanging out, I made the conscious decision. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go all in, and if it doesn't work, I tried. I remember that moment, and here we are. We're still together. So
During the course of all of this, and it's written in the book, is you created this list. You had this list that you kept with you. Tell us about this list.
so that that list actually kind of came about from what we were talking about before when I started writing and figuring out the patterns of my life and this and that. Well, then through that became like the list of and it was all questions. What do I want in my life? What do I not want to repeat in my life? Well, I had a bunch of lists. What do I want in a partner? What am I looking for a partner? And to me, it was important because if if I don't know what I'm looking for, how am I going to know when I find it? So for me, it was important to have that roadmap, if you will. I like to refer to it as a map because my mind works in pictures all the time. It's part of the curse of the business. In our business, we read scripts like every week of different scripts and try to make changes. So that's why when you say it was written visually, it's just that's exactly where my mind is. Everything is visual for me. So that's where the list came about. And then obviously throughout the years, you start carrying them around and this and that. And so, yeah. And she was the list is what happened. She,
In your business, in your life, whether it's military or being a stuntman, you've encountered obstacles, falling, all the stuff that you had to overcome. Through all of that, though, nothing really prepared you for real life as you learned that you were going to become a father. And as I was reading your story in here, I'm reading it as if you are telling us that all of that never prepared me for the next big adventure that I was about to go on, and that was being a parent. Can you describe to us what it was like when you found out that you were going to become a parent for the first time?
that, uh, I don't know how much time we have to describe it, but so yeah, it was such a cool moment because it was something that in all honesty, it was a moment that I kind of dreamed about since I was 17 years old. I knew I wanted to be a father. I knew I wanted to have kids, and it just a lot of things happened in life and it never worked out. And it was about the point where I was starting to give up that it would ever happen, to be honest with you. So when that moment finally happened, and everyone talks about, oh, you want to. I see all these people they try to be ready before they have kids. Oh, I want to make sure I have this and ready and this ready and make sure we have a place first and this and that. We didn't have anything. We were we didn't even have a place to live yet. We were staying in like a friend's extra bedroom and trying to save up enough money just to get an apartment and is what we were trying to do. And I came home from work and I saw some worry in her eyes, and I thought it was all gonna get derailed, and, I started trying to fix something that I wasn't sure how I could fix it, and she told me, and then my mind exploded into a mental vacation.
Well, and I think the way you talk about it, you have no choice when you're faced with that situation because 'cause you're in a similar situation before. You've got this look, you're like, "Okay, what did I do?
Mm.
This is it. Life's about to end for in this segment of my chapter," and it's completely just the opposite. It's it's like it's something just gave you a breath of fresh air that said, "No, your life is really just about to change, but it's gonna change for something even better yet."
It seems like every great chapter of my life started with a fall, whether you're falling in love or falling into fatherhood or anything like that. It's like a big shift, any type of dramatic shift when you take that fall is a big moment and they're important ones. And that's kind of why I go back to that. Love the fall.
And when your son came into the world, he didn't come into the world like everything was all great. He had his struggles too when he came into the world as well, right?
Yeah, he was 10 weeks early and he was born at 3 pounds. And those first those first 3 weeks, even 4 weeks were super scary. I mean, it was like every day was felt like a heart attack. It was just like, well, we think he might have this and this. And now you're going home trying to figure out what that even means and researching this. And yeah, that was pretty touch and go for a while. We spent months at the hospital.
I want to take you back to one time in particular that you were talking about in the book, and that is the first time that you actually got to touch your son. And you described it. Describe what was going on that led you to that, and then what that was like when you actually got to touch for the very first time.
She went into labor. It was really late and it was one of those moments where you're racing to the hospital and, I think I parked in the front yard of the hospital. That's where I just and, you know, did a really bad rerun hood slide of the Dukes of Hazzard there and trying to get into the hospital. But, yeah, when we went through those doors, everything just happened quick. I mean, I think when we walked through the front doors, an hour and a half later, he was born and he was out. And he came out and the doctors grabbed him and everything was happening fast and swarmed by nurses and doctors, and his cry didn't even sound real. It sounded more like a cat's meow, like it just it and then they just whisked him away and he went out and the doors closed, and then Manya just kind of whispered, "Is he going to be okay?" And I didn't know what to say. I kind of made a promise I wasn't sure I could keep, and and then so when she had to rest a little bit. It was a little while later, a couple hours later, they allowed me to see him. I had to kind of scrub in, to the NICU and with the gown and the whole thing and all that. And so seeing him for the first time was pretty intense. I mean, it was just you're it's a moment that you dreamed about for so long, and now you're almost afraid to get too attached, because you don't know if he's going to make it. And it's really hard. So I I think the nurse saw me and teared up just thinking about it. I think the nurse saw me sorry, struggling a little bit with it, and then she was like, "Oh, you want to put your hand in?" She opened up the side door, and I just kind of reached in, and his hand just grabbed onto my pinky finger there, and that's the picture. Well, actually, that's a picture in the book, but it wasn't while he was in there. But um, yeah, that was the strongest handshake I've ever felt. It was it was a big moment right there. I'll get you.
Was that where the moment where you realize you have to maybe start changing maybe the way you're thinking, the things that you're doing, because now you have not only are you have your wife, but now you also have your son, and now you know that you have to be you're their lifeline. You're the one who has to make sure that there's stability in their life. It was that the moment where you realized that, okay, I've got to change, maybe it's kind of some things I've been doing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think my whole stability was always something that was super hard to find in this business. I mean, you were moving around a lot. You're here, you're there. Like nothing's consistent. Not the only certainty we had was being uncertain was pretty much all we had. So, in that moment, yeah, it's a big moment because now you have, those little eyes looking up at you, and there's a lot more responsibility, and you don't have the luxury to make selfish decisions of, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try this. I mean, you got to make it work. And I think, like any parent, you want to have a better life for, you want your kids to have more options and more opportunities than you did. And so you want to create this amazing life for them. And that was the goal.
Was there any moment that crept into you at that point that maybe said, maybe I should do something different as far as career wise? Did that ever cross your mind of that maybe I need to do something that's more, I guess, get back to the word stable, or did that never cross your mind?
It didn't cross my mind actually, but the only difference was I was open to any opportunity. Didn't matter what the job was, "Hey, can you do this?" "Yep." And then you go do it. And like, because, there was moments where, yeah, okay, nobody needed a stuntman today, but you know what? These guys need an extra hand to carry some equipment. And then I'd run over there and work with those guys. And I might not know what everything is, but I guarantee you no one's gonna outwork me. And it was just having that drive behind you, it's like they would stack stuff in a line and I would go and I'd pick up 10 of them and I would just start running down with it. And they're like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "I'm just trying to keep my job, man." And they loved me for it. So that, then they would kind of use you and that would help fill in the gaps. And then that led to here. And then just having that drive behind you, that family drive behind you of, you know what, we're going to make it no matter what. And we're going to have an amazing life. And just saying yes to any opportunity that comes your way it's a different mindset and it works.
There's a point in the book where Mana is saying, um, is talking to you and wanting to know if the baby was going to be okay. And you said, everything's going to be fine. When you're walking away, do you feel like you were trying to suppress everything because you wanted to give the impression that everything was being fine, everything was good, I'm doing okay? And at what point, if you did that, did you start to realize, no, I'm not okay. I've got all these struggles that I'm having to deal with. My son's in the incubator. My wife just had a baby. I've got to figure out my work situation. Were you holding it all inside for a while? And at what point did you finally say it's okay not to always hold that inside?
For sure. 100% of the time. Now, did I realize that I was struggling keeping it together on the inside? Yeah, absolutely. But if that's what I have to do to make it work, then I'm definitely going to make that sacrifice to make it work. And I think that, you know, a lot of people will say that, hey, it's not good to hold your emotions in and this and that. In which, I mean, what I know things work different. Not the same situation doesn't work for the same people. And I think I wasn't suppressing my emotions. I was feeling them by all means. I was feeling them, but I'm going to go feel them away from them because I need them to know that something solid is going to be in their life. And that something solid is going to be me. So I will fall apart behind closed doors. I'll fall apart in my truck and I'll let it out there and I'll come back to them and I'll be the anchor. I'll be the strong point for them. Not because I'm trying to pretend I'm someone I'm not. It's just that's the way I was looking at it. Now, is that the healthiest option as psychiatrists would tell you? I don't know. I don't think so, but I don't think there's really anything wrong with that. I think that it's you're sacrificing a few things for yourself to try to be there for someone else. I think that's important too.
You describe the book as a flashlight for your boys to use on the nights when life gets dark. Now, maybe there's somebody watching us right now, watching this interview, who feels like they're always in the dark. They're currently in the dark right now. What is one lesson from your journey that can give them maybe the grit to take that next step forward?
Well, I mean that's a great question, and I think I would be curious to hear your answer on that question as well, too, for sure. So, I think in all honesty, just I think the driving force behind it, like exactly what we were just talking about. Like, were you falling apart on the inside? Yes, I was for sure, 100%. And I wasn't, I think it was the realization of when you have something to love that's more than yourself. When you love something more than yourself, whether it's your kids or your wife or this and that, and that you're willing to sacrifice and do whatever it takes to do what's right for them. I think just having something else to strive for. I think when you focus too much, what do I need? And not everything's about me. Is that I'm not sure I'm being 100% clear on that, but it's just having more than just you. Like, having
Right.
something more.
Yeah, and I think for me, it would be for somebody who's, maybe feeling like they're in the dark right now, or they're not sure which way to go. I think for me, the first thing is to say, okay, yeah, I know that I'm feeling this way, and it's okay. It's okay to feel this way. There's nothing wrong with feeling like you're in a place that's dark. I think the important thing is to just remember to take a step, just to move something in the right direction, because you know inaction is not going to get you anywhere. You've got to take a step. And whether that's, for others, like you mentioned, for other people, it's just hiding it inside and that works for them. They deal with it. For others, it is. For others, it is reaching out to say, I need some help. And there's nothing wrong with either way. Whatever fits with you, whatever you feel inside is the way that you need to go. You don't have to feel ashamed about it. You don't have to feel down about it. Just know that, yes, you can acknowledge the fact that you're struggling, but there's also hope. Take a step, get up and do something, move, do something good for somebody else.
I mean, that's an awesome answer to that. But I think the funny thing is, my story is maybe it's a unique story. There's a lot of stories in there. There's a lot of people resonate with that story. But the honest to God truth is, I felt like a failure most of my life. I felt like I had a failed marriage. I felt like I had a failed military career. I felt like I had, like I had all these failures in my life to the point where you don't think you're going to make it. The part of the reason why to me, this book's a flashlight for my kids is because I know my boys are going to fail at stuff. I know that for sure. And I want them to, but I also want them to learn how to kind of celebrate those failures. You know what? That didn't work. I'm gonna keep going. I'm gonna learn more ways that don't work until I find one that does. And because all those failures is what led me to success. And I think any type of entrepreneur, anybody successful is going to tell you the same thing of they they didn't just, hey, I got an idea and then all of a sudden be successful. They failed for years. Most of them did. Some of them something pops maybe a little sooner, but I think that's, if someone's feeling in the dark and like things aren't going to work out, well, that means you're close. That means you're close to something because that means you just learned a few things that didn't work. Keep going. You're almost there. That would be my advice.
We often wait until it's too late to tell stories that actually matter in our lives. And sometimes we get to the end of our lives. You hear this about people who get to the end of life. One of the things they regret the most is not doing things that they wanted to do, that they wanted to follow. That's their biggest regret is not doing that. So maybe something. What is one thing that you want your sons to know about the man that you were before you were their father? What is something you'd like them to know?
I just want them to know about the failures. And the reason why is because they're like right now they're 10 and 12. So do you remember when you were in, let's just say high school? Remember high school, your first heartbreak, how devastating that felt? But when you look back on it now, it's so laughable. You're like, that didn't, like, that's ridiculous. You know what I mean? So it was kind of the realization of like looking back, I remember feeling like how devastating that was. You felt like your heart got ripped out. It's the end of the world. My parents would never understand that. So that's why, I kind of wanted to write about that, have those moments in there, let them see that and read it of, oh yeah, okay, this, and when it happens to them, hopefully they'll be like, oh yeah, this sounds familiar. Okay. They're not the only ones that have been through it. We've all been through it. They're going to get their heart broke.
Right, right, exactly. Now, speaking of your boys, like you said, they're what'd you say, 10 and 12? 10 and 12. So are they following in mom and dad's footsteps? Are they involved in stunts? Or do you guys, or when they do stunts, do you guys kind of cringe a little bit and say, oh, maybe you shouldn't do that?
It's funny because they're both actually pretty, I don't want to say cautious because that's not the right word, but they're pretty mindful of staying within their abilities more than I was for sure. But so do they, we're not pushing them into it. Obviously, they've been around it their whole life. I've actually lit my son on fire once, and he had a good time. And um, but so my older son, he actually already has his union card. He did a job that I coordinated, and he got to double a kid on a movie. And so he already kind of got in that way. But I don't know if they're going to continue it. They all have their own dreams, and we're happy to support their dreams or whatever they are. Do I think they'll be stunts? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But I'm sure they're going to be around it a lot longer. So
Well, we've covered a lot here. Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you would like the audience to know, either about you in doing your stuntman career, in the military, or anything that we haven't covered that you definitely want to make sure that the audience understands about you and your life?
In all honesty, I think that it's it's a funny thing. The when people find out I'm a stuntman, they always ask, "Oh, what was the craziest stunt you ever did? What was," they always want to know that part of it. But the real answer is the hardest hits I've ever taken have always been not on a movie set. They've always just been real life, and those are the hardest moments for sure. And it's kind of like that realization of why is that? Well, it's because, just like the military, you have a team behind you. You have people you can lean on. You have all these people to help you get through it. But in life, we don't always set ourselves up that same way in life. So I think if you can set up your life and have your own stunt team, if you will, and have those people that you can rely on, have as many people as you can, that when you have something amazing happen in your life and you call them up and you tell them that they're genuinely not jealous of you, and just have those people, surround yourself with those as much as you can. If you have someone like that in your life, hang on to them.
Wow, well, that's powerful. I have one final question for you. Through your military experience and now, working in Hollywood, becoming a dad, my question to you now is the name of the show is called Eagle Freedom Presents. So my question to you is, what does freedom mean to you?
That's a great question. I mean, especially growing up and with my background, I mean, freedom to me has always meant everything, but freedom mainly, and I know I briefly kind of touched on it of, my big one of my biggest fears growing up was to be locked into a job and felt like I had to stay there just because of the benefits that might not even be there when it comes time to have them. So the freedom for me has always been about just doing the best that I can with what I have and having options to chase down and spend my time where I want to. And, I feel very fortunate that I love what I do. I love being a father. I love my wife. I love the family that we have. And I'm just very excited about it, proud of it. So freedom for me means family.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, Aaron, I want to thank you very much for sharing some of your story. We'll make sure that all the notes in the notes that we have for your book are in there, so they can get a copy of that. Again, thank you for sharing your story with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's an honor to be here, and I, really admire your story and everything that you do and what you stand for. So definitely proud to be here.
All right, Aaron, thank you very much. Your story is a master class in what it means to truly take the armor off. And I know your words are going to be a flashlight for a lot of people listening today. So again, thank you. And to our audience around the world, make sure you pick up a copy of Love at First Fall. We've got the links waiting for you in the show notes. Aaron's story is a reminder that our falls are often just our next direction. And I want to hear from you. What is one flashlight moment, a lesson, or a piece of advice that helped you get through your darkest night? And share it in the comments below. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to hear to do. And most importantly, please be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe to Eagle Freedom Presents. And remember, until next time, you too can rise, inspire, and overcome. God bless.